Yeah, okay, let's talk about the roundtable because I know we're still a little while away. We've seen a submission from lobby groups, from CBA, from a number of people. There's this headline in the AFR this morning. They've done a bit of a research from the Centre for Independent Studies. Now, more than 50% of people rely on government for their income. That is absolutely terrifying.
Look, I think, that we want to be a country where people have the opportunity to work and as many people as possible are contributing, to net position to tax. Now, we know that there are some people who need that support, but I think what we should be doing is trying to make sure that we are creating the environment that helps as many people as possible to be positively contributing in terms of working and contributing to tax. I know that the article also hit concerns about the NDIS, and I think this is an area where I think we really do need to work out how do we address the growth of the NDIS, because
can't we just go back to that first principle that it's for the profoundly disabled? That's what it was designed for.
Look, I think that the Grattan Institute, for instance, has come up with some significant reforms that they are putting forward because, I've spoken to families across the community who have had life-changing support from the NDIS. But I also have spoken to families where they haven't had support that they needed. And I've also spoken to people who've said, I've got all this NDIS support, I actually don't need as much as I've got. So I think the system is still not working. And for instance, in some cases, the Grattan Institute, for instance, is suggesting that, for young children, maybe the best sort of support they should be providing is actually in groups, in foundational supports. It's where the government is seeking to go with the states, but I think it needs to go further and faster and make sure that those foundational supports are in place, so those people don't need individualised support from the NDIS but can move into those foundational supports. But they'll only do that when they feel confident that that support is there. And so this is up to the governments and the states to really deliver those supports that are more effective, more cost effective, but give parents the certainty that they're getting the support that they need.
When it comes to productivity reform, I mean, the unions are talking about working less hours and somehow that's more productive. Do you get that? I don't. Explain it to me.
I think that, let's look at how Australia has grown its living standards. We have grown our living standards through productivity increases. That is 80% of the growth in living standards. And so, sure, people can make individual choices about, do they want to work full time? Maybe they do want to cut down to 4 days. I think those are choices that individuals should be able to make, and I think that's really important about balancing your own life. But if we're looking at the overall, in the overall country and what everybody wants, some people want to work 5 days a week. Some people take on extra hours because, for them, it's that opportunity to earn more. And so I think that we need to still give people the choice of, where does, where do they want to sort of gain things? Do they want to gain them in extra, do they want to gain it through their wages because they're saving for a house because this is important to them? Or do they want to work fewer hours, in which case negotiate with your boss to work a 4-day week if you can? Yeah. Like that I think is giving people that ability to be owners of their own lives, to be honest.
Yep. And in some cases that can be productive. I want to ask you about tax reform. Is your measure of where we go forward with this and a measure of success really that the envelope of tax that the government is taking stays the same, just the mix within that envelope changes? Therefore, increase the GST, lower personal income tax, or would you accept that the overall tax take needs to go higher?
Look, I think we should be aiming for really the first. We are at a point where we're taking a relatively high amount of tax in the system. There are obviously, but we are also growing our spending fast, and we have grown that very fast in the last 3 years, and I think that is of real concern. But what I'm seeking is to say, look, let's take a revenue neutral approach, and see how we can rebalance the tax system towards what we want. We want productive businesses that are investing because that helps drive prosperity for everyone and real wages. We want young people to be able to get ahead, to be able to buy houses, to have kids, do the things that other families have done at that same time in their lives. And they are really struggling to do that right now. And we want the net zero transition to be as cheap as possible. So we need a tax system that supports that rather than makes it more expensive. But the approach I've always taken is to say, let's take a tax neutral position. You can have a different argument about spending and how can we pull back or, what are those spending pressures? But let's start with a tax neutral position. Yeah,
we'll see what happens there. We are out of time, Allegra. Thanks so much for your time. Sorry about that introduction, but you get what I was saying.
It's all right, Laura. Anytime.